I'm sure no one would disagree with me if I were to say dojutsu were extremely important in the Naruto world, and even to this day they still are in Boruto. Naruto has a very unique and fun approach to most of the abilities in the series, and the eyes are probably the best example of this, or at least in my opinion they are. Not only do they seemingly work like plug and play where you can just grab an eye set, pop it in and have cool moves, the techniques are all fun, unique and powerful abilities that are just broken and cool to look at. On top of that, there's a bunch of them. There's the Sharingan, Bakugan, Renagon, Rene Sharingan, Tenseigan, Kitsuryugan, Jogan, Shinragan, and Ishiki recently debuted a new one that none of us know the name of yet, but what do we know about it? It does cool stuff like all the other dojutsu in the series. The majority of this video is going to be taking a sort of in-depth look at each dojutsu and in the end coming to a conclusion on which one of them is the most powerful among them. At least what it would be in my opinion. You could obviously come to your own conclusion. I'm just here to provide you with the information. But before that, let's establish a few baselines. In the beginning, there were only 3 dojutsu known to us in the Naruto world, that being Renagon, Sharingan, and Bakugan. These 3 are known as the 3 great dojutsu, and they all share one common ability and then build their special traits after that common ability. And that ability is to be able to see the amount of chakra in one person's body. Now, you could probably say that 2 other dojutsu would share this ability just as a byproduct of stemming from the Renagon and Bakugan, that being the Rene Sharingan and the Tenseigan, but it's unknown if these eyes have those abilities. Just saying you could make an argument for it. Anyway, sorry for the super long intro, but I feel it was needed given the scope of topic that's being discussed here. But let's get straight into our first dojutsu, that being the Renagon. You definitely get the impression that the Renagon is stronger than all the other dojutsu when it's first debuted. There are these sort of like rules to the Naruto verse that are seemingly established that the Renagon just constantly break, and I'll get into that in a second. But on top of that, it has some fairly cool lore whenever we're first introduced to it. It's the eye of the founder of all ninja, and it's said that he'll come back as either a god of destruction or a god of creation whenever there are times of turmoil inside the ninja world. Aside from that, I'd like to talk about a cool feature of the Renagon that I never really see anyone bring up. It's the idea that the Renagon grants the person who awakens it a unique ability separate from the 6 paths technique, similar to the Manekyo Sharingan. Before I get into this idea, I'd like to mention this would neither apply to Obito or Nagato, as their Renagon were not awakened by them themselves, but instead are just transplants of Madara's eye. However, if they can use Madara's unique ability for themselves is up for interpretation, although I feel there is some evidence to support it. So let's get straight into talking about Madara's Renagon ability, which I believe to be his Limbo clones. I know it's often speculated whether it's his MS ability or his Renagon ability, and I'll get into that stuff later, but for right now, let's do a quick rundown on what the Limbo clones are. As listed in Data Book 4, perceiving this phantom is impossible. The enemy's unpreparedness invites disaster. A person who possesses the Renagon can intervene in an adjacent world, an extremely distant world. In that space, a shadow is produced, which everyone who is connected with the current world can't feel. Not only will the jutsu user gain a duplicate of himself with equal ability, but it will also be invisible. Scoring off against a user, counterattack is impossible. Going up against this ability will result in one losing against such a powerful enemy. The Renagon can shape one shadow. With a complete set of 2 Renagon, it can shape 4. When fighting the enemy in close combat, the shadow will stay away, but after a time, the shadow will return. Now, that's just what the ability does, and as you can tell, it's extremely broken. But to address the comments of this being Madara's MS ability, this is likely not the case, since it's implied Madara has to revert his Renagon back into a Sharingan to cast Genjutsu, meaning his Renagon doesn't have the benefits of all his Sharingan does. And obviously, he only uses Limbo with his Renagon. You can apply Obito has this ability and possibly Nagato by proxy, since Madara says he doesn't want to use Limbo in front of Obito. It could be for either 2 reasons. 1, Obito would see the Limbo and simply avoid it, or 2, Obito would see it and figure out he could use one as well. Both are fairly valid interpretations, since we do see with Sasuke, another Renagon user, you can see Limbo, and we know from Obito and Kakashi, you can use someone else's eye power if you already have their eye. Sasuke's Renagon ability is pretty obvious. It's the Amenote Jakara or Heavenly Hand power ability. that allows him to swap places with himself and another object, or just two different objects. And he can even do this with things he's not looking at as an adult, shown in his fight with Kinshiki when he swaps places with the statue that's behind him mid-combat. Madara also implies he can't use this ability after observing Sasuke's first use of it. So Momoshiki's Renagon ability is also fairly simple. It just allows him to absorb jutsu in one hand and spit it back out of the other hand with varying degrees of power. This is shown whenever he absorbs B's Biju Bomb in one hand and then says that he thinks 2 times the power would be adequate to reverse it and then kill B with it. Or not kill B, but incapacitate him. This next guy is an anime exclusive, but Urashiki's Renagon ability can skip time or something like that, see into the future. I don't know, he's trash, moving on. Kaguya's Sharingan ability is Ame no Minaka. It's the one that allows her to hop dimensions and create them as well. And it's stated that only someone with her power can use this eye. Then we get to Hagoromo and like, bro, I don't even know. Hagoromo is just weird. You could say his ability is what's allowing him to stay alive in the Pure Land or wherever he is, since he does still have his dojutsu there, but that's the idea. I think there's more than enough evidence to say there's likely a unique ability granted to the one who awakens the Renagon. Aside from that though, all Renagon have access to abilities of the 6 paths, and this is where I'll come back to something I mentioned earlier in the video, where the Renagon sort of breaks these established rules of the verse. First up, we have arguably the strongest of the 6, the Diva Path. The Diva Path gives you the ability to, and let's just make it simple here, push stuff and pull stuff, but it looks cool and has cool names. Shinra Tensei is the ability to push stuff. Data book 4 says taijutsu and ninjutsu are equally ineffective against this jutsu. Focusing your power into it can increase the range and potency of the attack, and only someone with all 5 chakra natures can use this jutsu. Bansho Tenin is the same thing but backwards, and there is no way to resist it. The Diva Path also gives you an ability to create a technique called Chibaku Tensei, a sealing jutsu that is literally just sealing you in a rock, and it is so fucking cool. It's basically just you throw a gravitational sphere into the sky and it turns into a big rock that traps people. Sasuke can somehow bypass the gravitational sphere part with his Renagon, although it's unknown exactly how he does this. It's rumored he just uses a lower form of the 6 path Shibaku Tensei that him and Naruto use to seal Kaguya that also doesn't use a core. Next up, we have the Animal Path, another one of those verse breaking abilities where a user of the Renagon, as long as they have chakra for it, can just keep spamming summonings over and over and over and over and over and over again. And these summonings aren't like fodder either. Like, they wouldn't beat up Hashirama, but they're pretty strong. The chameleon that Nagato summoned was able to hold KCM Naruto in place so that he couldn't escape, on top of its ability to become invisible. And there's this dog that you can't kill, and if you hurted it, just grows more heads. And the only thing that was shown to be able to like kill or take out this dog was Itachi's Amaterasu. This is after Naruto used a Rasengan on it multiple times. On top of all of this, the user of the Renagon has shared vision with them, so it's almost impossible to do a sneak attack on them, unless of course you could just speed blitz them. The next ability of the Renagon is the Ashura Path, and this one just does not make any kind of sense whatsoever. This path just lets you shoot missiles and lasers, and that's it. How that came to be is just completely unknown. We just know it lets you shoot missiles and lasers. Next is the Preta Path, and all it does is absorb chakra. Fairly simple. After that, it's the Human Path that lets you absorb souls, but seemingly only if the person is substantially weaker than you, seeing as Nagato was able to pull on Naruto's soul and have a tug of war with him, but other random leaf ninja like Shizune just get fodderized by the technique, and it's just one pull, they're dead. The last one, and certainly the least one, is the Naraka Path. This one lets you reconstruct dead bodies and interrogate people. It's lame. Now, I sort of lied back there. There is one more path. It's the 7th one. It's the Outer Path. This gives you the ability to use Rene Tensei to bring one or multiple people back to life at the cost of your own life. The range of this ability is likely limited, or there's a time factor to it, because Nagato didn't use it on Jiraiya, but that's whatever. Let's move on to the Sharingan. The Sharingan is the first dojutsu introduced to us in the franchise all the way back in chapter 12 of Naruto. And at this time, you definitely get a similar impression to the Renagon when it's first being shown, but not to the same degree. It's being hyped up by Sasuke as being able to see through illusions and reflect ninjutsu. And Zabuza tells us Kakashi used it to penetrate and copy over 1,000 jutsu. We also get to see Kakashi use it to completely ragdoll Zabuza later in the fight as he starts copying his movements, taijutsu, ninjutsu, and even mocking his speaking pattern. It even got to the point where Kakashi was using Zabuza's jutsu before he could even finish them. Most of this stuff is part of the Sharingan's first Tomo ability. We see what the second Tomo can do after Sasuke's first fight with Lee. Even though Lee was beating Sasuke up and Sasuke couldn't block his attacks, we see him copy the taijutsu Lee was using, showing that he can at least see and break down Lee's moves with the Sharingan. This changes depending on the anime or manga, but in the Boruto anime, we see Sarada use her 2-Tomo Sharingan like a microscope and find out Boro's mist is filled with viruses, and in the manga this is done with her 3-Tomo Sharingan. But regardless of the amount of Tomo, this is an ability the Sharingan possesses. Now in Naruto, Sasuke does use his 3-Tomo Sharingan to see the cellular bombs that Deidara had planted in his bloodstream, but nonetheless we get to the conclusion Sharingan's kind of used like a microscope. The second Tomo also gets rid of the tunnel vision effect provided by the Chidori. The third Tomo is what gives you the ability most people call precognition. We actually get to see this in Sasuke's fight with Naruto in the Final Valley. When Naruto is coming at Sasuke, Sasuke sees a few Narutos in front of the actual one, telling him where Naruto is going to be at and where he's going to attack, allowing Sasuke to counterattack Naruto perfectly and turn the battle in his favor. This sort of precognition works best when the Sharingan user's opponent is moving in a straight line. Sasuke mentions this during his fight against B, and we see B counter it when using the 8 Swords style to confuse Sasuke's Sharingan. Along with these features, the Sharingan also has exceptional genjutsu prowess. Excluding the Manekyo, we see the height of the base Sharingan's genjutsu power during the 5 Kage summit. Prior to his fight with the Raikage, we see Sasuke have a run-in with one of the Raikage's guards named C, who is a genjutsu professional. Sasuke puts him under a genjutsu in which he shows him a Susanoo-like figure, and even after C is broken out of it by Darui, he still says he feels paralyzed. Data Book 4 tells us what genjutsu Sasuke used here, and it says, although not as much as Tsukiyomi, this is an illusion technique that makes the best use of the Sharingan's Eye of Hypnotism ability. In an instant, the target is shown a terrible illusion, completely taking away their own bodily control. That's not all though, the Sharingan also grants you access to 2 plot-defying abilities called Izanagi and Izanami. Izanagi is what Obito calls the practical application of Hagoromo's creation of all things ninjutsu, which I covered in a recent video so I won't repeat it here. Izanagi when active makes anything disadvantageous to the user, whether it be damage or death, to be rewritten and nullified. Anything that is advantageous is kept as part of reality, the ultimate genjutsu that blurs the border between fantasy and reality as said by Obito. You can seemingly extend the duration of your Izanagi by either adding eyes to it like Danzo did, or having better control over your Hashirama cells like Obito does, where Obito is able to use his Izanagi for 5 to 10 minutes per one eye, whereas Danzo is able to only use his for 1 minute per eye. The downside to this ability is that using it will cause blindness in one of your eyes, in which it could never regain light again unless you use this eye to awaken a Renagon like Madara does, which you can say gives credence to the idea that Hagoromo can apply the effects of Izanagi as many times as he wants. Izanami is supposed to be the counter to Izanagi, and to sum it up quickly, it creates a loop in time that won't allow you to escape until you find the flaws within yourself. We see Itachi use this jutsu on Kabuto in the 4th war, and Kabuto after coming out of it is just a much better person. He starts helping the alliance and he's now just a good guy even to this day in Boruto. The Sharingan can evolve past its 3-Tomo stage though. Just strong emotions in general will make it level up, as well as the person stated by Tobirama. No one experiences deeper love than the Uchiha clan, and we see Sarada awaken her Sharingan through whatever feeling she got from wanting to meet her dad for the first time, whether it be excitement or anxiety. Obito also awakens his Sharingan through wanting to protect Kakashi and Rin. He's the only one we've ever seen awaken a Sharingan and it go directly to a 2-Tomo Sharingan, which you could say leads credence to the idea that love is stronger than hatred for the Uchiha clan. Tobirama also says the more hatred and darkness an Uchiha gets, the stronger their eyes become and they become. We see this in the Kage summit where it's stated by Karin that Sasuke in his base form has a more dense and cold chakra than his curse mark stage 2. But that's all for the base Sharingan. Let's talk about the Manekyo. The Manekyo is a power awakened whenever an Uchiha experiences a great loss or an influx of strong emotions. We're also shown by Obito and Kakashi that awakening the Manekyo will force your 2-Tomo Sharingan Sharingan to evolve into a 3-tomo. It's unknown whether this is directly due to the Manekyo itself, or the emotions experienced after losing Rin just caused the 3-tomo and MS evolution all at once. Regardless, it would mean having the MS would grant a 3-tomo. The MS is usually coupled with 2 unique abilities in each eye, and it's been awakened by Indra, Madara, Sasuke, Itachi, Obito, Shisui, Shin, Kakashi, Izuna, and Fugaku in the anime, but not the novel or the original manga. Each of the people I listed that have known Manekyo abilities, excluding Sasuke and Itachi, have completely unique ones not seen in anyone else. So let's take a look at all of them. Before I get into that though, Madara, Indra, Fugaku, and Izuna all have Manekyo abilities that no one knows of, unless you take the games into consideration. In them, Madara can use his Sharingan to seemingly rewind time, although he never displays this ability in the original manga. Now, I feel it's only right that if we're talking about the Manekyo abilities, we start with the man that debuted the Dojutsu to us in the first place, Itachi. Itachi is the only known MS user who has 2 completely different abilities, as in neither of them complement each other. In his left eye is the Tsukuyomi, which Zetsu calls the most powerful genjutsu, obviously excluding the infinite Tsukuyomi, and in his right eye, he has the Amaterasu, which Zetsu calls the strongest physical attack, which is a form of blaze release. The black flames that scorch all on heaven and earth and supposedly burn for either 7 days and 7 nights or until the target is extinguished. Tsukuyomi traps you in an illusion world of which Itachi can freely control time and space and has essentially complete control over you once you're inside of. When fighting against Itachi as an Edo Tensei, Naruto stresses to be that if he gets hit with either of these abilities, Tsukuyomi or Amaterasu, he's going to be completely done for. Tsukuyomi really isn't a brute force attack, it's more like Itachi mentally crippling you so that you die from brain rot or at least become incapacitated, like we see with Kakashi and Sasuke at the beginning of part 1. It's stated in Itachi's Midnight novel that Itachi can use this genjutsu to actually just straight up kill you, as he does with his girlfriend by making her live out her entire life in just a picosecond, or he does with the other men of the Uchiha clan where he does something similar to what he did to Kakashi, but to a much greater extent, so the person actually dies. There are also obvious examples like what he did to Sasuke and Kakashi, where he inflicted so much mental damage that they were incapacitated for multiple days and could not be awoken unless it was by Tsunade, who was literally the greatest medic ninja on the face of the earth at the time. Moving on from Itachi though, the most popular or loved MS ability actually, and I ran a poll on this, is Kamui, and it won by a landslide. Kamui is one of the most interesting and cool abilities at the same time, and unlike Itachi's, both MS abilities complement each other in some way. There are 2 Kamui abilities. The one in the left eye allows you to suck things away that are at a distance and create portals of varying sizes to pull in larger or smaller objects. This can be used to even snipe off body parts like we see Kakashi do with Deidara or with the Geto statue later on in the war arc. Kakashi even claims at one point that he can take out the entire 10 tails with his left eye, although he was amped by Naruto at the time. Beyond that, if you become skilled enough with the left eye, you can use it to enter and exit the Kamui dimension at will, which is something we see Kakashi do a few times and we see Madara do once. To pause here, a lot of people actually think this is a plot hole where Madara uses Kakashi's eye to enter the Kamui dimension because of Obito's earlier statement that he can't use Kamui with the 10 tails inside of him. But for one, that isn't what Obito says here. He actually says that he just can't pass through things, which isn't what Madara is doing. He's actually just sucking his entire body into the dimension. And there's also a statement in Data Book 3 saying that Kakashi's eye ability isn't able to be countered, and this is fairly consistent. Everything Kakashi tries to use his Kamui on, unless Obito, who has the other eye, interferes, like when he went for the statue's head earlier in the war arc. Onto Obito's Kamui, the power of the right eye. Obito's Kamui ability allows him to slip through solid objects and avoid being attacked because of it. Or he can just straight up travel through the ground. This is done even without Obito's awareness at times. As Data Book 4 says, Obito does this even subconsciously, which makes sense when you think about the skill he was using with as soon as he awakens it on the Mist Ninja. Beyond that, Obito can use his right eye to suck you or himself into the Kamui dimension, so long as he's making physical contact with you, which for someone as fast as Obito isn't that hard. Minato says that Kamui is a space-time ninjutsu that surpasses both his and Tobirama's, likely due to the fact that Obito can teleport around without markings like they have to use. Getting out of the Kamui dimension is something that's been debated about for years, but I think I have the answers as to what would either let you escape or at least give you a chance of escaping. Number one is to reverse summon yourself. Now obviously this only works if you know the reverse summoning jutsu like Sasuke or Naruto or Jiraiya, and the summoning jutsu is a space-time ninjutsu, and we see this demonstrated when Sasuke summons a Hulk in Kaguya's separate time space. And the only other method I could think of possibly working to get out of Kamui is using the Flying Raijin, as the Flying Raijin is a jutsu that's stated to surmount the walls of space, time, and distance. As long as Minato or Tobirama knows that they have seals outside of Kamui, they should be able to teleport them. Combining these two Manekyo abilities gives Kakashi access to a perfect Susanoo, which he can use to imbue the power of Kamui into Shuriken, which is just completely busted. Because if you don't know these Shuriken are Kamui Shuriken and they come near you, you're just sort of screwed unless you can get out of Kamui like the people I just mentioned. There's also debate on if this actually is Kakashi's Susanoo. It is though. The Susanoo is extension of the user's soul, and Kakashi's Susanoo has his eye scar. Just to get Shins out of the way because his power is so damn lame, all he does is control weapons with his eye, and that is it. Next is probably the most overhyped MS ability I've gone over thus far, and that's Shisui's Kodo Matsukami's, and it's overhyped, but it's definitely understandable hype. It definitely is strong, just not as strong as some people make it out to be. Kodo Matsukami is essentially a genjutsu that allows you to put someone under your complete control without ever noticing it. But that's likely the ability of only the right eye that Danzo possesses, since we see the other one Itachi interacts with perform in a different way. Itachi is given a command and he is fully aware he's under control, yet he's still under the genjutsu and following the order, which is pretty weird. I would say based on that, the left eye is more powerful. The last MS user who has known abilities is Sasuke, and I've already covered one of them. Is the one he shares with Itachi, the Amaterasu, but his second ability actually complements this one and is called Kagetsuchi, which allows him to shape the flames of Amaterasu into different things he wants to, like spikes, or spread them all over his Susanoo like he does against the Raikage. He even uses this against Kaguya in her ice dimension to cut him and Naruto out of an ice trap. The last power of the MS is the ability that anyone with their Mangekyo should be able to awaken, as long as they awaken the ability in both their eyes, which is the Susanoo. Susanoo is unique to the user and is an extension of the soul formed out of chakra. The early stages of the Susanoo put the user in great pain, but it can be evolved to a number of stages, from a small ribcage to the gigantic perfect Susanoo like we see Madara, Sasuke, and Kakashi use. Last but not least, for the Sharingan, if you have the MS, you're going to go blind, but this side effect can be averted by obtaining the Mangekyo of a family member with close blood ties to you. Once you put their eyes in, you gain a eternal Mangekyo Sharingan, and you can spam your abilities all you want. But let's move on to the last of the three great dojutsu, the Byakugan. To cover the Byakugan, I feel I need to go over quickly the perceptive ability of the eye, since the dojutsu itself doesn't offer you much more than just those, but gives you access to a variety of other taijutsu abilities. When turned on, the Byakugan has such power that it causes veins to appear all around the user's eyes. This eye not only gives you the ability to see the amount of chakra, but also the way chakra flows throughout the body. Additionally, users of the Byakugan are granted access to a 360-degree field of vision. This is showcased as like a dome around the user, with the exception of the small little blind spot located at the back of the head. The last thing the Byakugan offers, if advanced enough, is the ability to see the Tenketsu points, which if pressed can halt chakra from flowing throughout the body and prevent you from moving your limbs. All these things lead Kakashi to make the statement that in terms of perception alone, the Byakugan completely surpasses the Sharingan, and I'd like to offer support for this statement and a potential debunk to it as well. You can interpret it how you choose, but the support for it would be, let's take a jutsu like the Chidori, which makes Kakashi so fast it's hard for him to ascertain counterattacks, the tunnel vision effect, so to speak. A downside Mito mentions is so great that he should never use the jutsu again. If Kakashi had 360-degree vision, then he'd of course be able to negate the tunnel vision, and to a greater extent than Sharingan, due to the field of vision upgrade. The debunk to this would be saying that Kakashi isn't a true true inheritor of the Sharingan. So him making the statement doesn't have to apply for the Sharingan overall, but I'll leave it at you to come to your own conclusion. If you think it surpasses the Sharingan, that's fine. If you don't, that's also fine. The Bakugan does grant you access to a few super strong taijutsu moves. For example, the Gentle Fist is where users of the Bakugan will slap their hand against your skin and inject their own chakra onto your chakra stream, directly attacking your organs. That, coupled with the fact that Kakashi says there's no way for you to train your internal organs or strengthen them in any way, would give a Gentle Fist user durability negation in a sense. Just like the Sharingan and Renagon, the Bakugan has its own super variant we get to see on display in Naruto the Last called the Tenseigan, a dojutsu created when a member of the Otsutsuki clan transplants a Hyuga clan's Bakugan into their own eye sockets. So Neri implies the Tenseigan can be stronger depending on the quote-unquote purity of the Hyuga's eyes, although it's never actually explained what he means by this. I will say it's pretty unclear whether or not the Tenseigan provides you with the same dojutsu abilities the Bakugan does. The perceptive abilities in specific, you could say it's implied through it just being an evolution of the Bakugan, but we learned the Renagon is an evolution of the Sharingan, but not all of the abilities of the Sharingan are given to the Renagon. As I said with Madara earlier in the video, he does revert his Renagon back to Sharingan to cast Genjutsu on the Raikage, which would mean that the Renagon doesn't have the same Genjutsu effects or whatever that Madara needed in order to put the Raikage under Genjutsu. Regardless, the Tenseigan is just narratively implied to be much stronger than the Bakugan, and it also gives you access to flight as well as True Secret Orb like projectiles. They're not exactly True Secret Orbs, we don't really know what they are because they don't make the big circle explosions like the True Secret Orbs do. If you notice, when a True Secret Orb blows up, it creates like a giant spherical explosion and it cuts like perfect circles into the ground, and Toneris just aren't doing that here. But that's all for the 3 great dojutsu and their super variants. Now we step into the Boruto territory where we have the least information on all of these eyes. We do know some of what they can do, but that is the Jogan, Shinragan, and Ishiki's new dojutsu. Ishiki's dojutsu actually has 2 abilities, even though he only has 1 special eye, which is kind of weird. His first ability is called Sukuna Hikona. This ability allows him to shrink himself as well as other objects so long as they are not living, and that's really the end of it. That's all he can do. And then the other ability is called Daikokuten, and it allows him to store the shrunken objects in a dimension where no time passes. So then he pulls them out and then he can just drop them on you. But that's the entirety of his ability. It's a pretty cool ability. It's just extremely simple. That's it. The next one is the Jogan. Now, there is debate to be had on whether Boruto even has the Jogan in the manga or not. We know he has it in the anime because we obviously see it, but in the manga, it's a bit more vague. If you look at Boruto's eye in the beginning of the manga, it doesn't have the black outlines that the Jogan does. It looks more similar to a Byakugan. But all we see the Jogan do is like a weird portal opening ability. It can see like evil spirits and it can see chakra. But that's all we see it do up to the current point that I'm recording this video anyway. So if something comes out after this, don't blame me. It's just that's all it was available to be. Oh, and it makes Boruto a lot stronger. The last dojutsu is the Shinragan. This is the newest one as the date of this video that is displayed with Ida. The dojutsu essentially allows her to see everything in the world whenever she wants to, so long as the event doesn't predate her creation, because she is a robot that was created by Amato. And that's all we know that ability can do thus far, at least at the point in the manga I'm at right now. She has another ability, and it's unclear whether this is linked to her dojutsu or not, but she has another ability that essentially just makes you fall in love with her whenever you see her. We don't know how it does this, whether it's like maybe smell or something like that. We just know that she does it, and it does not work on Otsutsuki or people with karma on them. So it won't work on Boruto, Kawaki, or any of the Otsutsuki clan. But that's all the dojutsu I have to explain. I'll let you come to your own conclusion on which one is the strongest out of all of them, because I do believe it's heavily up for interpretation. I don't think I could tell you definitively which one is the strongest. I can tell you what's implied to be the strongest, and that's just the Rene Sharingan, but that's all I could say. It would be up to you to decide if you think that Kamui's may be a bit more destructive in a fight, or Amaterasu or something like that. But other than that, like and subscribe and have a nice day.